Hey everyone, my name is Neil Aryan, and this is the sixth video in a series of videos that I'm going to be doing regarding AWS and content that will be covered on the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. In this video, we're going to be talking about global architecture and resources. Now, some of the broadest parts of the global architecture is a region, and a region is an isolated geographical area that contains different resources such as data centers. And these exist to enable quick delivery wherever you have demand. When you choose a region, there's a few things that you want to look into, such as compliance with data and legal requirements, such as HIPAA, proximity to customers to ensure that there's low latency whenever you're transferring data or requesting data from them. You want to make sure that the available services in that region match your needs. You also want to make sure that it's affordable to you and that you're not paying for a bunch of services that you'll never really use. Now, they all have safety features to ensure that your data is never compromised. And one of them is that the region protects your data and applications, and the data may never be transferred to another region unless it's with your approval. Each region is also further divided into availability zones, which are isolated data centers that are held far apart from one another so that if one goes down, the others likely will still keep running. But they're still close enough to have low latency to ensure that data can be transferred within the different availability zones. AWS recommends that whenever you run an application in a region, you want to have at least 2 availability zones that can run your application. And this exists just to enable a fault tolerant setup. And let's see. Let's say you have this one region here and you put all of your resources in one availability zone. If disaster strikes, all of your resources are gone. Your application is not going to be running. However, if instead you distribute your instances into 2 different availability zones and disaster hits one of them, you're still going to have one availability zone that's still okay to run your application. So that's the importance of having a fault tolerant setup by distributing your resources into more than one availability zone. Now let's talk about CloudFront. Whenever you see CloudFront, you need to think content delivery network or content delivery service. And whenever you see content delivery network, you want to think CloudFront. These usually come hand in hand in the examination, and whenever there's a question asking about a content delivery network, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be AWS CloudFront. And this CloudFront exists to ensure that content reaches a client reliably with low latency. And this is used to deliver websites. This is used to stream live videos. And it's also there to distribute patches and updates around the world to different operating systems or applications. Now, edge locations are sites that use CloudFront to store cached copies of content to make delivery easier. And these are really used to ensure that content can be delivered to people around the world. Now, let's look at a use case. Suppose that you have a customer in Asia that wants to use your application, but the instances of your application are in a region in the United States. Now, in order for him to get to use your application, first he has to send a request to your region. The region has to process it and then send your customer the details or the way to download this application. And that takes a long time because this is really limited by the speed of light. And it's going to take a while for this to be sent back and forth. So what we can do is instead of having your customer get all the data from the United States, they can use a cached copy of your application in one of the nearby edge locations. I know that there's edge locations in Japan and in Hong Kong, so perhaps they can use one of those in these cached locations. Now, instead of getting the data from the United States, they can get the content quickly through their use of edge locations and AWS CloudFront. Now, some AWS resources that can be accessed from the AWS Management Console, some of those are command line interface, there's software development kits, and there's AWS Elastic Beanstalk and CloudFormation. Now, AWS CLI, now if you're a programmer, you may have heard of this. It's basically allows you to use multiple services using a command line interface. And by doing this, you can automate many actions done in your services or application through the use of scripts. For example, if every time you launch an instance, you automatically connect it to an autoscaler, you can actually automate that so you don't have to manually do that every time you launch an EC2 instance. Whenever an EC2 instance is launched, it automatically goes to an autoscaler group and you don't have to worry about setting it up. Then you have software development kits, SDKs. And these allow a user to access many of the services from an API that supports their programming language or platform. Now, this is provided by AWS and it has its own documentation that's given by them. You can read more about that in the white pages. I'll include the link in the description. And some of the supported languages for them are C++, Java, and .NET, but there's many other languages. These are just some of the more commonly used ones. We also have Elastic Beanstalk. There's usually always a question on Elastic Beanstalk on the exam, so you want to pay attention a bit. It's used to provide code and configuration settings. And when you give these settings, Elastic Beanstalk deploys the resources necessary to perform the following tasks. It can be used to adjust capacity. It's good for load balancing, automatic scaling, and application health management, which we'll look into a little more in future videos. And then finally, we have AWS CloudFormation. And it allows you to build your environment entirely from code. And instead of using, the management console to manually put in whatever you need to, you can do all of that entirely through a program. And this provisions your resources in such a way that they're not only protected, but they can be reused very, very quickly. And if you want to compare this to programming, if you're into that, um, think of provisioning resources as writing your entire code down, and think of AWS CloudFormation as a method in your code so that you can simply call this method and it will do exactly what it needs to time and time after again without having to, recode the entire section. Additionally, it automatically determines the correct applications to perform whenever you're doing something, and it can roll back anything that's causing errors when it provisions these. Thank you for watching this video. In this video, we covered the AWS Global Architecture and we introduced you to some AWS resources. For the exam, there's many, many more. In the next video, we're going to be covering connectivity and network protection. If you enjoy this video, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.